Hi, friends. We are back again with another episode of Soaring Through the Chaos during Corona times. I know I'm smiling. It's not easy to smile, but smile we have to because we have to lead our life, not just be a victim there. So, with me here is another amazing friend, Lakiba Pittman. I think we've known each other for almost 8 years, 9 years now.
Yeah,
So,
that's true.
Lakiva, we met at the Stanford Center for Compassion and Altruism Research, and
Correct.
we there were a lot of interesting people over there. I was particularly impressed, Lakiba, with the kind of stories I heard from you, like I was from many people. And I'm one of the reasons we have this forum is to talk about how, through the most difficult challenges that we go through, it is possible to grow, not just survive, but to grow beyond survival.
Mhm.
So I would like to know first how you came to Stanford Seacare, a little bit about your history before that, and what brought you there in this whole compassion circle and all that.
Okay. Well, thank you for inviting me to be included in this. I really appreciate you for that. And let's see, I started meditating in college officially. I was, if I look back, I was that empathic kid. I could feel people's energy. I could tell when a kid was sad or stressed out, or I could just pick up on what was going on with kids. And as I got older, um, I was just aware of my own sensitivity to things.
Mhm. And
And
where
so
were you? Which part of the US were you at that
I was
time?
born, and I'm actually still here. I was born in Palo Alto, California.
Oh, you're
I kind of
born.
traveled. I was born in Palo Alto, traveled around the Bay Area, but when my parents got ill, I returned to Palo Alto to take care of them, and they've now passed away. And I'm actually now living in my childhood home,
Wow. Full
Palo Alto.
circle back to your childhood home.
Full circle, full circle.
Wow.
And actually, even metaphorically, kind of return back to myself, to who I wanted to be, you know,
Wow.
as
Wow.
a child. So I knew I had this sensitivity, this kind of thing, and I couldn't find people in my house or environment that seemed to be having the same experiential things going on that I did. So I got really interested in books. And I'd find bookstores and I'd be reading about spirituality because I was trying to um, validate maybe myself in terms of what I was perceiving, what I was thinking. And I remember finding Autobiography of a Yogi.
Interesting.
And when I read that book, although I didn't have all the experiences that he had as a yogi, but it did resonate with me, and it showed me that you can have perceptions and feelings and understandings kind of beyond what everyday people were talking about. Kind of
Mhm.
validated me, to be honest. And so I got a little older, went to college, heard about transcendental meditation, and took the course. And so was initially introduced through transcendental meditation, and which was mantra oriented. And then I kind of kept going. I became a lifelong learner. I took Silva, dabbled a little bit in Buddhism, a little bit in Hinduism. I grew up as a Christian. My mom and dad were Baptist, so I started there. So I was already, even as a child, kind of open to the mysteries of life, this presence that I was feeling that I couldn't really describe, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and so come up more years, I went through college, graduated, got my first official job working at HP Hewlett Packard, worked there for 23 years. And while I was working there, I would sneak in little things. Like it was before you could do meditation, really. The relaxation response book was out. So they
Yes.
were already kind of making connections. So I used to have, what did I call it? Quiet hour at lunchtime.
Yes,
I'd
yes.
have babbling brooks and different music playing, the lights down. I was able to put up a little flyer that said quiet time stress reduction, and then I was kind of teaching meditation in there. People would say, is this meditation? Well, if you want to think of it as meditation, without a mantra, I was just teaching kind of how to body scan, relax your body. And so I was sneaking it in. And not only was I sneaking it in that way, if I think back, I became one of the global leader trainers. And so I was sneaking it in, right? It was coming in with me when I would open the door, but whatever I taught, introduction to HP, communications at HP, efficacy at HP, global leadership at HP, whatever class I was teaching, I was still kind of bringing in um, my authentic self, to be honest.
Very interesting because I spent more than a year at HP in
Ah,
1998, and just
oh my
before,
God.
and that was the time when the leadership transitioned to Carly Fiorina. And
Yes.
I was a contractor, I was not an employee. But I remember those relaxation rooms and the quiet rooms. And
Right, right.
even as a contractor, when I just needed to chill, I would go into those rooms.
Exactly, exactly. So about the time she came on was
Yes.
about the time I was a little bit transitioning out. And I went to Agilent after that. Anyway, I kept these same practices, I guess I would call it. And besides being involved in corporate America, high tech, I always was also very involved in the community. So
Mhm.
I volunteered. I was the chair of the Human Relations Commission for the city of Palo Alto. Numerous I volunteered everywhere at the school district, at the health center, at the Boys and Girls Club, at the Girls Club, at college track. I mean, I had a calling, I guess I would call it that, but I needed a job. So I had to have a job, which was my HP Agilent days. But I also felt drawn to communities of color, under-resourced communities. And so I was also doing that. So when I got laid off, which at first you think, oh my God, no, what am I going to do? I realized, okay, wait, now I have time to do me, right? And to do more of me, because that was me in corporate America as well. And that's when how can I say it? My meditation was always personal,
Mm.
right? Meaning I wasn't, except for that time I snuck the meditation in at HP, I wasn't broadcasting it per se. I wasn't teaching it. It was really kind of uplifting my own life and maybe my family or people that were close to me. By the time that I left HP, I started doing business consulting for a while. And then I got a job as an adjunct professor at a local college teaching what I had been doing at HP, right?
Wow. Wow.
And I don't know why or how. I think it was to make myself feel more comfortable, because doing a training is different than teaching for a semester, right? So I was
Much
a
more
little
depth.
intimidated by the can I really do this kind of thing. And so I think I ramped up my practices so that I would be more calmer, so I would minimize my stresses, so that I wouldn't feel less than, because in academic settings, you're really challenged to, your credibility is kind of always questioned. And I had had enough of that in life as I had been growing up, where people doubted my efficacy because of my color, because of my gender. And so I think I ramped up. I started meditating longer and taking all of these classes. I've always been a lifelong learner. And I actually, coincidentally, not advertising, but I have my Wisdom 2.0 water bottle.
I still have it. I still
And
have
I
it.
went to the first one,
Wow.
and I'm sitting there, and there's a man named Dr. Doty up on the stage. And what is he talking about? He's talking about the Center for Compassion. I
Wow.
live, Stanford's right around the corner. And so
Yes.
I'm thinking, there's a Center for Compassion at Stanford right around the corner. I'm going to check it out and see what it's all about. And one thing is, because I'm teaching, I have classes in diversity in the workplace, race and ethnicity, and culture and media. They're all similar, just kind of coming from a different angle. And one of the things that I always taught my students was, say up here are all of the dimensions of diversity, right? Gender, age, language, race, ethnicity, skin color, whatever. Then drop down a bit. That's the human level. The human level, we're all one, right? We might express in these different dimensions of diversity, but we're really all one. And then I would say, and if you're open to it, if you go deeper, there's a spiritual level where we're all connected. So I always had this way of teaching, even in a business school where I'm teaching business protocol, that the true way to benefit and realize diversity and inclusion is to connect heart to heart, to listen to people's stories and take them in, to recognize when people are suffering and have compassion for others. So I was already incorporating this notion of compassion in how I was teaching, because I wanted my students, once they go out into the workforce, I want them to be compassionate leaders. Because over those 23 years, met a few compassionate leaders and a whole lot of not so compassionate leaders, right?
Well, in
So,
many ways, HP was an amazing company. The HP way was all about compassion. And
absolutely,
among dozens of companies I consulted with, I must say the HP, at least in those days, was totally driven by compassion. And even leadership was always consensus based. There was no one autocrat or one big boss.
it's
People were
really,
not afraid of bosses at all. That was one company and a big company. In startups, you have those cultures, but we're talking about one of the biggest icons in Silicon Valley doing that. And interestingly, when I was at Synopsys much later, which is
yeah,
when we met, I met you when I was doing all this
That's
work
right.
on
That's right.
intercultural communication, and particularly ushering people into synopsis, as well as how do you manage global teams. And
Yes.
all about understanding. We tend, or the human mind tends to focus on differences, but
Yes.
when we start focusing on similarities, the differences are not even 1%, 2%.
Right.
Just like
Exactly.
the differences in our DNA between
Right.
any two human beings, the differences in DNA are like fraction of a percent.
Exactly.
So, and that changed everything. And that's how, it's like what you were saying. I had not even used the word compassion in my work. And then I found out about Jim Doty. And
Right.
I'm like, I got to know this guy. So I read a nice email, revised it 3 times because I knew he was the head of neurosurgery at Stanford. He
Right.
may not be listening. And I told him, I just want to help. I've been through this and I know I've suffered in the past, but now I'm in a position to help. Please, how can I help? And that's how I met him through email. But
Wow.
it's amazing. It's
Very
amazing.
similar because I
Yeah.
emailed him too.
Oh, is that right? After being in the Wisdom 2.0. Yeah, I emailed him as soon as I saw the first posting in the newspaper. I was studying Buddhism
Yeah.
and the work of the Dalai Lama. And then I find out Dr. Jim Doty, an atheist, and Dr. Dalai Lama, and His Holiness the Dalai Lama has started a Center for Compassion at Stanford. And I was like,
Exactly.
hey, I can be a volunteer.
I
So
felt the
sorry,
same
sorry for
way.
interrupting your story, but I really
No, I
wanted to
felt the same way.
acknowledge.
I felt the same way. One point about HP, just for a second.
Yes.
I went to school with Dave Packard's daughter, and by the time I got to
Wow.
HP, Dave Packard and Bill Hewlett, they were kind of semi-retired, but they were still there when I went. And so I was at corporate headquarters, and so I got to know them. And they were the nicest people, and they had the HP way. And the
Yes.
HP way was a compassionate way of how
Yes.
to have regard for people. So I'm not surprised really that I ended up there in an environment like that. So I'm still living that today. There's a way that you can have regard for people and treat people. And so I went through the program along with you. We both went through C-Care, and I continued on from there. So I teach compassion cultivation training courses.
Wow.
I try to get them to underserved communities. Right as the pandemic started, I had a class, my first class that we had to, before they were almost shutting everything down, but they hadn't quite shut it down. And I got to do one online class with a program called Life Moves. And they help homeless, they help the homeless population, and they have homeless shelters from Daly City to San Jose. This would
Oh,
have been the second offering that I did for them, where I do an 8-week class for the frontline workers, for the social workers and staff. And so I try to pick populations that might not have access to these healing modalities and uh, work with them. So I'm doing that. I'm teaching compassion cultivation training. I also teach mindfulness from K through 12, elementary school, kindergartners I have who are the cutest thing, all the way to my college students. And I'm also a trainer for a program called Global Alliance, and it's trauma healing. So
wow.
I'm one of the trainers that does a part where I lead meditations and things around self-compassion.
Yeah.
And yeah,
So this is amazing, and I'm so glad I'm talking to you again. Um, One of the things that I hear every day, because we're going through all these challenges, people losing lives, people having to be in situations where it could be unsafe or dangerous, people losing jobs. We're talking about serious economic hardship with
Yeah,
over 30 million jobs being lost in a matter of 2 months.
right.
So there's the threat at the very physical level, but the economic threat, both of them still relate to our way of life. And then the next level of threat, which is emotional,
Right.
the burden of it, the guilt. Oh, did I do something right? Did I take care of my mother? Am I taking, if I cough, there's guilt.
I know, for real, right?
Yeah.
I had to cough one day when I was in Whole Foods. I was like, I'm going to pass out trying to hold this cough in. Yeah, I had a mask on, but I started feeling anxiety, you know,
Exactly, exactly. Even with the mask, like who coughed?
even with the mask.
There's so much build up. I mean, it's almost like from a neuroscientific perspective, we're not able to make decisions through good judgment, what's known as the prefrontal cortex. A lot of our judgments are now happening through the fight, flight, or freeze response.
I was going to say the same thing. I
Well,
teach that
exactly.
to my little ones and my college students
Yes.
and my adults who I'm now
Yes.
starting to have sessions with. So
Yes.
here's how I do it. I ask everybody to hold up your hand like that,
Yeah.
hold your thumb over like that, fold your fingers like that. What's that in there? The amygdala.
Yeah.
That's the amygdala. And the amygdala goes off as an alarm when you get frightened or shocked, traumatized, it goes off.
The
It
triggers.
kind of needs to go off because if it was really danger, you would
Yeah.
need that extra cortisol and adrenaline to run,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
But it
Absolutely.
also goes off now. We're all in a global amygdala situation, right?
Yeah. If
And
not
the
hijacking, at least it's an amygdala situation.
yeah,
Yeah.
for real, right?
For
Well,
real.
that's
For real.
true. It's a for real one. So here's the thing. This is the prefrontal cortex, like right here. And you have two amygdalas, by the way. They're like that.
Oh,
Here's
that's
the
right. There's a
prefrontal.
left and a right.
There is. There is. So here's the prefrontal cortex right here. And inside deeper is the hippocampus. So the prefrontal cortex, like you said, overthinking, get my senses back. What should I do? Figuring things out. The hippocampus, logic, and emotions. So
Hmm.
sometimes what happens, the amygdala goes off and it throws the prefrontal cortex offline.
Yes.
So now I'm not thinking so clearly. I flip my lid, right? That's how
Yes.
I teach it to kids, right? Goes offline. And then my emotions get out of whack. I don't know what to do. I'm so stressed. Oh no, what am I going to do? I can't focus. Whatever that happens, what can you do? Take a deep breath. Not this kind of deep breath. Not that. That won't work. That won't work. It's got to be a real deep breath with counting out. So I'll show you. Deep breath in, count out to 5. At least that deep. Look what happens with each deep breath. My prefrontal cortex is coming back. Keep
Wow.
breathing. My prefrontal cortex is coming back. Now I can think. I have my brain again. So if they're in class
I
and they've
love the
got
way you teach
anxious,
Lakiba. Through a normal conversation in a party, you can teach this. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. This is the first
that's
time
what
I did
happens
see
when
it.
you have to learn how to teach kids. Who knew? For my kindergartners, and they're like,
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
like
yeah.
ready to go. So yeah. But, you know, we all do need a little help, right?
Yes,
Because it's not only our own stress that we're feeling. We're
yes.
feeling the stress of people in our house, if anybody's there. We're feeling anxious about going outside, anxious
Mhm.
about coughing if we do go outside, anxious if somebody else coughs,
Mhm.
anxious for when am I going to see my family, anxious about I have no income. I've been on the employment phone thing for a half an hour and nobody's answering the phone. I mean, there's a lot.
There's a lot.
You know? So what I say and what I do, what I realize, I mean, I have to break it down so it'll work for me.
Mm.
And I think I break it down because I've got to teach it. So when you have to kind of teach it, you have to figure out the different parts, right? So you can help somebody understand. So what I say to people, I kind of have a this side and a that side, because I'm kind of visual. Visual things kind of help me understand concepts. So what I say is, over here, these are all of the practices I can do to help mitigate the stresses that are inherent in life and the ones that I'm going through today, right? So what do I mean? I can meditate, I can stretch. I have to find my own things, right? I have to think, I can meditate, I can breathe, I can go for a walk, I can pet my dog or cat. Kristen Neff, who does a lot of research on self-compassion, she teaches what she calls soothing touch. So I have my handy dandy right here because I'm going to touch my face. And I don't want anybody to freak out if you're watching this during the pandemic. Okay, so soothing touch. You're feeling stressed out, you're feeling confused, you're feeling sad, you're feeling depressed. One hand on the cheek. One good deep breath. You'd be surprised what touching your own body can do.
Wow.
That's one. That's another. Two hands. Eyes open or closed. You'll know what feels best for you. One hand on the chest. That's quite soothing. You could also do a little pat, pat, pat. Or some people like rubbing in a circle. You can do two hands. I can see you relaxing just with me just doing it. Two hands. The two hand one feels like more support to me. One hand on your chest, one on your belly. That also feels like support. Like if you're a little bit anxious, that would be a good one for yourself. Rubbing your arm, giving yourself some comfort there. And the old good hug. It's going to be okay. So, for the stresses that are happening to me, I have to have some things that I'm doing that offer me comfort, right?
Yeah.
That reduce cortisol, right? That reduce the stress hormones, that activate endorphins. So at least I'm back balanced or feel pretty good. Now that I'm there, now that I have my oxygen mask on, now I can save the world, right? Now I'm better able to address all the other issues that are out there that I kind of don't have control over.
True.
I can control my response to them, right? I can be an activist. I can be out there for social justice, right? But if I don't spend enough time here, I will get empathy fatigue over here,
That's
right?
true. That's true.
I have to do some building up through a variety of ways. I have to identify my own ways, right? Some calming, some strengthening, some compassion for self and others, some forgiveness, some acknowledgement that I'm going through something. That's mindfulness.
Yes.
Paying attention to how I'm feeling and kind of working on myself. And then that better helps me deal with things that are confronting me. And I think that's how people build resiliency to the suffering that's going on in the world and in
Yeah.
their lives.
And I think in our lifetime, we've probably never had to deal with so much suffering on a wider scale. Of course,
Exactly.
individually, we all have suffered, but this is now we're talking about global suffering. More than 7 billion people restricted in many different ways for good reasons, and feeling like tied down in some cases, not having the basic resources. I'm so glad I'm talking to you again, Lakiba. Uh, One of the best things I liked about being at the Center for Compassion was the language. We didn't have words for many things like this. We need
Right.
self compassion. Christine Neff was a big proponent of self compassion. And what you just mentioned earlier, which is empathic distress, empathic
Yeah.
fatigue,
Yeah.
compassion fatigue, because there's
Right.
only so much. I know one doctor in New York, I think she was the head of emergency. After going through lots of COVID cases, she just let go of her own life. And
She did. That was so sad.
that was so sad. And the reality is that we cannot even imagine what kind of pain she was suffering, looking at all the, looking at all the cases in her. I hear that the doctors had to triage. They could not even take care of many of their patients, and they're like, okay, who is likely to survive? It's
Just
like a
horrible.
battle.
Like
It's
the
truly like
worst
a
thing
battlefield.
ever.
Yes,
Right.
yes,
I mean, I'm overwhelmed by the thought, to be
yes,
honest with you. And
yes.
sometimes I have felt this before, but I especially feel it now. Sometimes I feel like, well, before this happened, I already felt like the world is on fire and I have some drops of water, right?
Yeah,
Helping me to kind of get on purpose in everything that I do, right? Helping to provide me motivation when I'm kind of tired or don't whatever, you know. No, the world is on fire. You got to get out there and be you. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And then when this happened, it got magnified in
yes.
terms of, oh my God, what am I? Because you can feel like you're one person, right? What can I possibly do? But the answer is do you. Do what you do what you can do. And so that's when I started just saying, I'm gonna have a mindfulness drop in, kind of like my old HB days. Now I'm calling it, what am I calling it? Drop in for mindfulness or something, a term for today, mindfulness, right?
Wow, wow.
And every Tuesdays, I meet in a group. So whoever wants to sign into Zoom, right? And I teach what I would teach in my compassion cultivation training classes, or in my
Uh-huh.
mindfulness classes, or in my self-compassion classes, or in my trauma series. I'm just pulling things from them. It's my water to put out the
Wow,
fire,
wow.
and I'm sharing it there. And I never have a lot of people, but
Mhm.
the people that are there are always the people that should be there, right?
Yes,
And
yes.
now I've started meeting with people in the group individually,
Wow.
right? And so not only is it helping them, but it's helping me feel like I'm doing something. When you mentioned, well, you said it as post-traumatic. And remember, I said, well, it's kind of, we're living it. It's post-traumatic, but we're living in it right now
It's a
as
current
well,
traumatic stress disorder,
right?
not post.
That's what I'm saying. But I like this notion, and I feel the same way, that it's not just post-traumatic stress, but post-traumatic growth. Like,
Yes.
how can I continue to grow and tap into my own resiliency and my own power and my own life and my own light? How can I access that in order to kind of cope with all the different things that are going on from day to day? And I have so much empathy for this doctor who couldn't find a way out or couldn't find relief, I'm presuming, right? And chose that pathway. But that's why we have to spend, in our course in compassion cultivation, one of the parts is to envision a compassionate image.
Yes. Yes.
Because sometimes we reach, well, we don't really have a limit, but we think we do. So sometimes we reach a limit in our perception of who we are, the dynamic we have, and what we can do. And so that's when you can call on this compassionate image, which could be a deity if you believe in something, but it could be the sun, it could be the ocean, it could be the sky, it could be the earth, right? Where you're getting some energy to come inside you. And it's also can happen when you're meditating and you're releasing stress, right? There are ways, but you have to replenish. You have to replenish yourself, right?
Yeah.
Daily. And it wouldn't hurt a few times a day. And it doesn't always have to be, like we say, on the cushion. Like it doesn't have to be a formal meditation, but it should be meditative like, right? Like a shower where you're really mindfully noticing the water, right, hitting your body. Or if you go for a walk, you're really feeling grateful for the sun and this breeze. You have to kind of step a bit into what we are grateful for. And it's kind of in the midst of that gratefulness that we can grow. I would say that my ancestors certainly went through something horrendous, right? But I'm a descendant of one of the survivors.
Yes.
I'm a descendant of a survivor. So I'm feeling there were a variety of things that kind of kept them. Their beliefs, their spirituality, their community. There's healing in communities, right? Their families, maybe the work that they did. You've got to find deep within, I believe, every person, there's some resiliency and there's some strength and there's some power. And also there's some quietness that's deep in. And when you meditate, you kind of start to access that quiet, which is like an atomic bomb. It's quiet, but it's also powerful. And so if you can tap in there, what you'll find, what I found, is the peace that I reach in my meditation starts to come with me when I go out the door, when I least expect it, right? I'll be standing in a long line and get irritated, and all of a sudden I'll notice I'm kind of mentally irritated, but I feel so relaxed. Like I'm not feeling what I used to feel. Oh, my meditation is coming with me into my life. That's when you start getting the rewards of practices.
True, true. It's like the fruits. I mean, it takes time,
It
takes
does.
years sometimes to nurture the tree, and then
Exactly.
finally the fruits start to appear.
And then sometimes they don't. But then
Or
we
sometimes they're
forgive
sour.
ourselves. We forgive ourselves. We forgive ourselves. We notice, okay, wasn't so compassionate in that moment. You know, that's a good time to, okay. Got a little stressed out there, got a little stressed out. Or, I mean, if you ever listen to, I mean, heaven forbid the people that listen to the news all the time. I barely know how you're surviving, but all of us listen to some of the news. And that can really send you over the edge. So if you start feeling on the edge, I want you to take that hand, turn
Uh,
that TV off, you know,
it's
give yourself some
interesting.
comfort.
We all have this tendency to believe that what's happening in the news is the only reality. But these days, news is only done to make it sensational. If it's not sensational, people don't listen. And
Exactly.
what's the most common sensational thing? Crime, injustice, anger, frustration, you
All
know,
the things that will activate our amygdala,
amygdala. Yes, yes.
right?
These are
Right.
like these are socially sanctioned amygdala hijackers.
Excellent phrase.
I,
You got to
I'm,
write that down. Did that just come to you?
Please, yes, yes, yes. Because as I was listening to you and I was listening this thing, they are
Yes.
socially sanctioned because it is totally legal, yeah, under the name of free speech and under the name of to actually work. Essentially, they get my marketing teacher. I did marketing for many years. My marketing teacher from Stanford, uh, she actually after Stanford, Rosemary Romeli, amazing lady. She worked on the Apple Inside as well as the Intel Inside. Remember that campaign? And
Yeah.
the whole Apple logo and the Intel Inside campaign. She worked on
Yeah.
both.
Yes.
So
Ah,
Rosemary used to say that one definition of marketing is messing up people's minds so that they'll do what you want them to do. Now,
I
how
teach
can you
that
mess
in
up
my
people's
culture
minds?
and media class.
Yes, yes, exactly. So now, how can you mess up people's minds? By going straight to their emotions. Because logic cannot mess up people's minds. People can say, hey, there's inconsistency here. But if you tell them, did you know this happened? And this is so outrageous, and da da da. And like before we know it, we get caught up in emotion. Of
Exactly.
course, that is not the purpose of media. The purpose of media is to inform us so that
Right.
we become more vigilant, we become good citizen, we learn, and we take care of our rights and others' rights. But the sensationalization of media is very much a marketing thing.
It
And with
really is.
that, I feel it's the socially sanctioned way of getting people's, the flipping of the amygdala or the flipping of
That's how
the
you said
rational side of the mind.
socially sanctioned. I had missed that part because
Yeah,
when I wrote it down, I put hijack your amygdala, but it is
yes.
the socially sanctioned
The
way.
socially sanctioned amygdala triggers or amygdala
That's why,
hijack.
as kids say, and my first week, I used their phrase. So, what do you have to do? You have to stay woke. You got to
Wow.
pay attention. You got to
Wow.
pay attention to what's going on.
Yes.
You know, you got to kind of read behind the lines. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I'm so glad. Again, this is my third time saying this, but I'm very grateful because you, like me, have gone to various different segments of society. Did a lot of work with tribals in the last 3 years. I was in India, and interestingly, I had gone initially with the idea that I was going to learn, I was going to teach them something. Guess what? They taught me many
I
things.
get it. I get it. I agree. I agree.
So there was growth in it, growth for me in it. So I must have worked,
Isn't that the
visited,
wonderful gift of it all?
yes, yes. I must have visited at least 30, 40 tribes from in remote parts of India.
Wow.
Well, in one state alone, in Odisha, there are 52 tribes, distinct tribes. And
Really?
so India is a very tribal nation. You remember, we didn't really have a religion when foreigners came into India. whether it is the Mughals or it was, we had many tribes. These tribal practices today, a combination of all this is what is known as the Hindu religion. There's no one book,
Oh,
there's no one book like the Bible or the Quran.
okay.
So we have many books and we have many teachers. We call them gurus. So we have a
Ah,
variety of practices, and there is, of course, the root, there is consistency. And the consistency is like almost like the five precepts, don't harm others, ahimsa,
mhm.
don't do good things, keep your life simple, don't lie, don't cheat, don't harm, don't abuse, verbally or sexually or any other way. So that's common across all religions. That's
Right.
common whether it's Buddhist or it's the Ten Commandments or it's the Jaina or any organized religion will say what not to do. So that it's like I like one author who says that via negativa, take out the things that are hurting us,
Yeah.
and then the positives start to come through. So I'm really glad because one of the things I realized is that those who are health workers or workers in mental health field, there are gifts here. It's not just that we are helping others to survive, but in the process, we learn how they're already surviving and how they're thriving in different ways.
That's
And
true.
we learn from that.
That's
Are there
true.
things you've learned? Are there ways in which you've grown as you work with a variety of diverse populations, Lakiba?
Absolutely. Every day, every
Tell us
time.
more about it.
Well, you do feel like you're offering, and to a certain extent you are, but in a way you're just opening up a door or a pathway for the knowledge to fill the space. And sometimes it doesn't come from you. Sometimes you might ask the question, right? And then they might offer an answer. I mean, I've learned, fortunately, my college students are from around the world. And so I not only learn things about culture, but about how thinking constructs are different, how people look at things differently, how even some terms are understood or not understood in different countries or cultures,
Yeah,
like the way
languaging is different. A lot
right
of
language
words.
is different.
Yeah,
So I'm learning that language is different, and not only language, but language is connected to a concept, and the concept may be different, you
yeah.
know.
Remember we
And
learned the word Schadenfreude, which
yeah,
is which doesn't exist as a word in English or in most other languages.
right, like that. So I'm always learning something new, and I'm humbled by it. I'm excited by it. I think I'm the teacher, and I've got them all fooled. Sorry, somebody's sending me a message there. It's dinging. Yeah, I feel like I'm the teacher, but it's like I've got them fooled. I'm the student.
That's
And
true.
so also, I think your students, we're all healing one another, and we all want to be seen and known and felt. And so I receive such love from my students that they don't probably even know they're loving on me. But if they ask me a question, or if they're interested in something that I presented, or if I get them to look at something in a different way, one of my assignments that I give is from another program that I went through at Stanford. Before I did the compassion, I got certified to teach creativity in business.
Oh
And
yeah,
it's
yeah,
one
yeah.
of the classes that's taught in the Stanford Graduate School of Business. And so one of the professors that taught was retiring. He decided, let's teach it, get a cohort who's going to go out in the world. So anyway, one of the tools that he uses is something called a live with. And a live with, if you Google it, you'll find it, but I'll tell you what it is. A live with is like a heuristic or a phrase or what would I call, or an affirmation. It's a question or it's a word or a phrase that you have to live with over a week
Ah,
or live with for some time, and then you write about it. It's kind of like journaling. So every week in all of my classes, I give them a live with. Some
oh,
concept, some something that
can you
they
give an
can't.
example of that?
What am I afraid of?
Ah,
Is one. Voice of judgment. So, like over the week, they have to notice when the voice of judgment jumps up in their head. When are they judging themselves? When are they judging somebody else? When is somebody judging them? Or when is judgment taking place? And so they're noticing, they're living with the concept during the week. At the end of the week, they journal about it. Or
wow.
one might be, we did one on stereotypes, and they had to notice, well, for my media class, they had to notice when they saw stereotypes represented in media, right? So they're different. They can be a question or they can be a phrase. Um, One of them was same difference. They had to notice people that were the same, people that were different. So the point I wanted to make is these live with, just like I start my classes with a mindful practice, that's me bringing those in. That's not really part of my required curriculum, if you will. But what I get from my students is I get their truth.
Wow.
I get their
Yes.
story. I
Yes.
get who they are. I am so moved and by my students, by young people, and their questions, their fears, their dreams for who they want to be. I mean, I feel honored, right? When they turn their homework in. I feel like they're trusting me with their soul. Sometimes I tell them you only have to write one good strong paragraph. Sometimes they write pages. I'm getting
Wow.
goosebumps just saying it. Sometimes they write pages of things that are going on in their life,
Wow.
you know, that they want to overcome, that they have fears over. And then at the end of class, it's like, what was your favorite part? The mindfulness was my favorite part, how we began class, and those live withs. And if
Wow.
they remember that, I feel like
That's
I'm
a lot.
successful. They
That's a
may
lot.
forget the dates and the times and the people and the concepts and the terminology, but
Yeah.
I hope they remember the essence of what I'm trying to teach about.
And I mean, we've had such a short time together here, Lakiba, but I know that people are going to learn a lot because I'm learning a lot just listening to you and the
Uh,
stories of your students and the
thank you so
diversity of
much for,
experiences you've had. So I
thank,
have a question for you.
yeah,
Can people, this is not advertising, this is the reason why I called you and all the other people. Is there a way people can reach you? Are there websites or is there a way people can join any of your drop-in classes? I would
okay,
love to hear from you later or now, uh,
okay,
the, the URLs so we can share it with people.
okay,
I would like a short bio which includes any contact information and particularly how they can sign up for these drop-in classes.
okay,
Because I'm going to send this out to literally my world audience. I have been
uh,
traveling quite a bit, and
yeah,
I want people to know that they can get at least in touch with people who from various cultures. There's so much we can learn from each other. I mean, I've been now in Mexico for 2 months, and the stereotype of Mexico is the reality is completely different. That's
right,
always the case, but
yeah,
how would I know until I go there, right? I mean,
true,
the gratitude, the love, the kindness I felt by the Latino people, I barely knew Spanish when I came here. Many barely know English here. But in a few words, you okay? You okay? You know, even the security guard, even the sweeper, Even the people at the grocery store, they know that he knows very. I go, poquito español, and they teach me, and I learned so much. And so
That's
again,
sweet.
the reason I'm saying that is because we're all there to heal each other, support each other. So very important. If there's any ways in which people can reach out to you and they can participate in any of your workshops, please send that to me. And is
Okay,
it okay to share that on different media?
absolutely. I'll send that to you.
And can I also tag you on, say, LinkedIn or on Facebook or any other medium like Instagram? Can I
Yeah,
tag you?
absolutely.
It's
Yes,
okay for people to contact you.
absolutely,
Great,
absolutely.
great. And I
So
know,
one good thing, let me just say that I started recently on Instagram. I
great,
have Mindful Mondays, and I give you a little mindfulness lesson, I guess I would say. Then I have Wisdom Wednesday. I give you
wow,
a little bit of wisdom that might not be from me, it might be a quote from somebody else. And then I also have, what do I have? I have something else. So I have different things that are on Instagram. But then on
wonderful.
Facebook, I have the drop-in sessions.
Fantastic, fantastic. I'm going
Oh,
to
and
get
this
your
is interesting. The one that I forgot, Focus Fridays, Focus Lakiba. I
focus.
also have Focus Friday, where more I give something more related to my business acumen, if you will, how to
Wonderful.
focus more to accomplish task or work.
Yeah, and for those people who are listening, it's not just about, although many of us are in business or have run companies and so on, at the end, we are all human beings. So we have to deal with the inner child, the pain, the suffering at
That's
a
true.
personal level. We also have to deal with the challenges our employees are feeling, our colleagues are feeling. Sometimes our bosses come back stressed or even online. Why isn't this report done? Because they have deadlines. We all have challenges. That's what I liked about the HP way. There was a there was a way in which we communicated, which was
That's
very empathic, which was compassionate. And I think it has made it to the DNA of the entire Silicon Valley, San Francisco. But I hope that these little, nuggets. I learned many things at the Gandhi ashram when I was in India. Again, very there are many labs that have lighted compassionate
yes, yes.
values. So we need to grow this, and I'm so glad again. um, any questions, I will give my contact information, also Lakibas. And if there's a need, if there are many questions, we can do a follow-up session. But we are here to serve and we are here to learn.
That's right. That's
any
right.
any other closing comments or remarks,
No,
Lakiba?
I just thank you so much, Shankar, for including me in this. I so appreciate you. We had a connection, and I see we still have it, even though it's 4 or 5 years later since I've seen you last. And I appreciate the work you're doing and what you're doing. You're always doing something sincerely to make an impact. I feel that, I see that, even through this vehicle that you're using today. So
it's
just thank you for being you.
Thank you, and it's time to return. I grew up in the ghettos, and everything I learned was from other people through their generosity.
Yeah,
So it's payback time. It's
I
time to pass
agree,
it on.
right? Let's do
Yes,
it.
yes,
Okay,
let's do it.
thank you so much. Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye
Okay,
bye.
bye-bye.